Mayor.
Hello there, everyone. Good
It
evening.
is a little bit after 6 o'clock, and so we'll go ahead and get started. Let's call the Johnston City Council work session number 24-10 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Coe? Here. Evans?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Ready?
Here.
Preferred.
Here.
We have one item on the agenda this evening, and that is to review and discuss the Johnston School Traffic Memorandum.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. During the citywide traffic study last October, during the public input process, the traffic operations in and around the schools were identified as one of the top challenges for the traveling public during the AM and PM commuting times. The original citywide study scope did not include a focus study on the schools or the traffic at those various schools at Johnston, but the city did think that it was important to have a better understanding of these operations and the impact on traffic flow in the community and ordered additional study of these areas. FOTH performed the original citywide study and was asked to review these operations in and around the 5 elementary and 2 middle schools. So they did perform multiple site visits to observe traffic operations both in the morning and the afternoon as well. And then they also engaged the schools with a questionnaire about each of their sites and the traffic flow. With that, we will review operations of those school sites and provide recommendations to help improve not only the safety, but traffic flow and reduce queuing onto city streets, which help create the congestion and driver frustration. During this process of the review, city staff and both have engaged both the school district superintendent. We've had conversations with the Lawson principal as well as Buildings and Grounds Superintendent Bob Devens. We've had great discussion and learned a lot. During tonight's discussion, we'll also introduce a couple of different strategies to help improve traffic flow. These strategies, though, they may require implementation of new policy to help guide us when we would recommend or implement these improvements, such as rapid flashing beacons. So if you think of Court 7, they've got the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. It's a mouthful. To help cross the street. Those have been identified in the study at one location. During the presentation, we'll also talk about the 3 E's: education, engineering, and enforcement. We're going to primarily focus on educations as a mean to help reduce some of this congestion and improve traffic flow. Like I said, there are a couple of engineering practices that we can implement. Enforcement was a topic of discussion, but really that's only really can happen and be effective when present. And we can't realistically think that we're going to station an officer at each of these sites during the morning and the afternoon commutes. So after the presentation, though, on the findings of the study, we would like to receive council input because we will be presenting this again next week at the joint city or school board city council meeting. So if you hear anything or see anything that you would like us to change, or if you've got any questions, please feel free to do that. And with that, I will turn it over to Patrick to help discuss those findings.
Thanks, Matt. You want to go ahead, next slide, or do I do that? Okay, so quickly we'll go tonight, just a little bit of an overview what we'll cover. I'll talk a little bit about our approach that we used, and then get into the elementary school discussions with Beaver Creek, Timber Ridge, Lawson, Horizon, and Wallace, and then jump over to the middle school discussions with Summit and the Johnston Middle School, and then just talk a little bit about our next steps. Now, before I move off of this slide, I want to make sure everybody kind of understands the overall, like, boundary of each school. And so if you look at this, the one to focus on here, I think, is Wallace Elementary. And this will lead into some of the discussion and some of the things that we're seeing. But Wallace Elementary is the light blue shaded area that you see on the map. So I think that has the largest geographic area in town for an elementary school. Then the other one to focus in on, I think, is really Horizon Elementary, which is the light green shaded area, where it's just kind of spread out across the community and also reaches into parts of, well, up in the Granger Grimes area side up of 141 up there. And then looking at Timber Ridge, Lawson Elementary, that gets down into Des Moines, and then Timber Ridge. So Lawson is the light peach color, and then the lighter orange color is the Timber Ridge area, which extends down into the Urbandale area. So that should hopefully give you a frame of mind and kind of think about what we're seeing probably relates to how big some of these geographic areas are. Now, Johnston Middle School and Summit Middle School, that services the whole community, the whole school district. So the kids from 6, 7, 8, 9 go to each one of those buildings. So. A little bit, Matt already touched on this, just from a public feedback perspective. If you recall during the citywide school study, we did a Map Social program where we get solicited feedback from a survey, and respondents could also tag different parts of town. And so we had kind of an open-ended question, and we received 37 written comments to the overall traffic operations in your elementary and middle schools, and received another 53 comments just related to school zones in general. And then you tag that on to just out of the questions that we had within the survey, out of the 540 respondents, there was 225 responses. And keep in mind, you can't sequentially add the 225, 193, and 155 up because the respondents were able to pick 3 of their top categories. So it's likely there was some overlap in these. But you can see there, the 225 respondents were dealing with the school drop-off pickup is their greatest traffic concern. And then it just kind of worked its way down from there, being with the traffic delays at 193, and then just school zones as a concern in general. If I have any questions or go through some of this too quickly, just go ahead and slow me down and ask questions as we go. So as Matt mentioned, based on this feedback, we went ahead, the city felt it was important to go ahead and dig into this just a little bit deeper. As Matt mentioned, we used a standard observation form for each site, and then we also send a questionnaire out to each school, the principal, so they could go ahead and provide feedback. Now, one thing, we looked at all these different characteristics, there's a lot there. But we wanted to kind of make sure, one, is that we were consistent when we went from school to school. Now, one thing as we go through here tonight, I really want you to think, are we dealing with a behavior issue that we're seeing at the site, how traffic is flowing, or is there an engineering solution, an engineering issue that we're seeing at the site? We go back, Matt mentioned the 3 E's, education, engineering, and enforcement. So as we look at each one of these, just keep that in the back of your mind, and because sometimes we just cannot necessarily engineer our way out of an issue that's out there. So just to kind of level set everyone, I thought it was important. These were the times that we observed where we had the greatest queues on site and on the adjacent street network. So what I did here is went ahead and just kind of highlighted the ones in red that were essentially above the 30-minute threshold here. If you see in the morning, it's more compressed. We're dealing with a 15 to 30, and I'll just say generally a 15 to 20 minute, with the exception of Horizon. If you think about where Horizon sits in the boundaries of that school district, it's spread out. People may be going to work, so that one spreads out just a little bit longer compared to the rest in the morning schools. So in the afternoon, this is a little bigger issue. I suspect the parents are wanting to get there early to get home quicker, so they're showing up and sometimes, well over an hour in advance of picking up the release time for each school. Now, one thing, just from a school operation perspective, the cars have a number in it. And like when I observed Wallace here earlier this year, they have a teacher or a teacher's aide that goes out and they essentially start walking the car line and they're given the numbers in the school building and they're putting those on the monitors and essentially the kids are released from their classroom as soon as their number comes up. So it's a pretty efficient way of doing it. And if you ever want to watch something kind of impressive from a student pickup perspective, what they do at Wallace was really quick and snappy, and it was out of there in no time. So one thing, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we get to the Horizon and Summit with Windsor Parkway. There's just a lot of overlap between the two schools right there. And so there's a lot happening on that street. So it was kind of tough to know necessarily which one. So we just simply know that it mixes in with the Horizon and school with the Summit Middle School there. So diving into the elementary schools. So each one of the schools we'll go through, we'll just kind of talk a little bit about the existing operations and then some suggestions that we'd like to make for the school district to consider on changing some on-street or on-site operations. And really from a queuing perspective, what we really want to try to get to is it was getting, first of all, traffic off the arterial roadway. I come down 86th Street here every day, depending upon what time I leave home, get into work. There's varying degrees of queuing that are happening there. For a number of years, that wasn't the case. Recently, it seems to be happening more and more, I think. But you can see in red along 86th Street, we get some queuing backing all the way up through their north entrance where the buses enter in up here. And then we get the queuing happening on, not Newgate, Lyndhurst, sorry, I live off Newgate. So on Lyndhurst, and they're using this first, the east entrance into the school. What that's doing is it just doesn't provide enough queue, enough storage to be able to do the drop off here in the morning, and it's awfully close to the intersection with 86th Street. So there's a lot going on right there. Everything circulates in a counterclockwise fashion here. The drop zone, one thing we'll talk about is trying to make that drop zone as long as possible so we move parents through that line as quickly as possible.
Hey, Patrick, I just have a real quick question back to your last, the numbers you had on this school critical operations time sheet.
Okay.
So the school critical operations time, so like Beaver Creek, you have 16 minutes and then 37. So is that measured by the amount of time in which any cars are lined up? Or or do you start the clock as soon as cars are backed up onto a public street?
Basically, when it's backed up onto the public street.
Okay.
If you see like at Wallace Elementary, they have their early learning program at Wallace, and it's kind of on the west side of the building. So that one was a little tough because you get the parents understand that, so they don't pull all the way up to that very west end of the building there. Some of the parents that arrive early stay back because they know there's some buses that come in there, and the parents with those early learners, they get out a little bit ahead of the elementary school, so they pull up and then they leave, and then the car line kind of moves up. And what we were seeing out there was some of those cars start backing up onto 62nd Avenue and then obviously down Northwest 59th Court. There was some good behavior there, and I'm probably jumping ahead here a little bit.
Sorry.
But there's some pretty good behavior because folks would not queue on 62nd Avenue. They would queue up on 59th Court, and then they would start moving through. As soon as the line started moving, then they would pull out on the 62nd. That's the behavior we want to encourage because it's not, we're minimizing the time cars are on 62nd Avenue. Now, one thing that's been beat into me over the years is it's always been 25 miles an hour and we have 35. I still drive 25 through there for the most part, all the way through. So that location is, you know, there's enough side friction there. And we did have that lower speed limit, so people, I think, have a tendency not to go through there as fast just because at 25 miles per hour for so long. So
Is it still 25 miles an hour during school times? Okay. Thank you.
So a little bit with Beaver Creek and a couple concepts here very quickly. Really, I think what we could do is look at, instead of using that east entrance, is go ahead and come up here to the west entrance and pull in and then circulate in that far south aisle of the parking lot there and try to double stack as many cars as we can in both lanes in that morning and pull that queue off of 86th Street, move it to that west entrance and circulate around. And again, that's going to put some pressure on this entrance here, that access point. But again, I think working with the parents and communicating, you know, you gotta let people circulate. So you just don't want to plug the intersection. Again, when the drop off happens, I think if we can do that, we can move the queues off 86th Street. We still will have some queues on Lyndhurst. And so we probably won't eliminate all that, but again, I think what we can do is keep that down to a bare bone minimum. What that will do, allow the intersection and any potential student crossings down at the intersection at Lyndhurst and 86th Street, that whole intersection, I think, will function better at that point. So, the second concept, if there's concern about queuing in the parking lot, we could put a couple aisles south of there for the cars to queue up. Again, I don't think putting more pavement down here is the solution. If it's out there, I think we can get around that pretty quick. Very similar with Timber Ridge. So the buses enter obviously over at the south end off of 72nd Street. And then up here off of 54th is the main entrance into Timber Ridge. There's a little bit of a 3-lane section, so it's 1 lane in, a left turn lane out, and is it a through right out? So that's kind of how that functions up there. One thing that you will see is parents kind of learn a way to get around if they don't want to get in the long traffic line to drop the kids off. There are some parents that are dropping off over here on Lou Clarkson and have their kids walk in from that location. Again, that doesn't bother me. We have a crossing guard there. It's spreading that traffic out over a longer distance or different locations and gives the parents the option. So a little bit with Timber Ridge, again, we have a couple just high level concepts. You know, just observing out there is, again, how can we queue as much on site as possible? There's a little piece in here that we would have to widen out and put a little more concrete down to essentially try to get 2 lanes to come in, and we could queue as many cars on the left-hand side here coming in. And again, trying to get that drop zone as long as we can in front of the school. So we're just not unloading 3 or 4 cars at a time. Let's try to stretch it out as much as we can and then circulate back out. And really how this is functioning with the stop sign down there, you know, having a left and a right at that location, it works. But I think the bigger bang for the buck would be to allow 2 cars getting in to being able to queue up. You know, there's some schools that will go against traffic flow. Well, they'll have a 2-way drive going in and out, but certain times of days it's just 2 lanes headed out. So there's some training that we can do since these are repeat, I'll say, customers that come in here and everything. So I think there's some options there. Second concept was using a little bit more of the existing pavement that's down. Again, double stack as much as we can on the entrance, but then file down and kind of come down to a single lane. And there would have to be a little bit of a bulb, concrete bulb put on here so we can spin cars back around. But then is there a way to be able to take and maximize the drop zone here? We get a little more circulation coming, a little more storage on site, and then be able to bend that back around and the cars would exit right there. So again, the goal here is to get as much traffic as we can off of Northwest 54th Avenue there.
Sorry about that. Patrick, do we have any estimates? I see in your kind of initial assessments, you give lengths of the loading zones or unloading zones. When, was there any kind of analysis put in place when we kind of double stripe some of these areas, how that actually adds either like in a percentage of loading zone space or just overall linear footage?
The queue length is, I think, really the key is get as many cars off as we can. And knowing that we're probably gonna have some spill back out there for, again, I go back to that table for a 15 to 20-minute, 10-minute period a day, depending upon which school you're at. In the morning, it's a smaller issue. In the afternoon, you know, that's gonna be a larger issue. But getting that drop zone and, making sure the kids are ready to get out of the car when we get there. And, you know, the teachers and the teachers' aides do a great job of being out there to help facilitate that. So it's just getting that out and making sure that we're trying to stretch that out as long as we can, just so we circulate through theirs.
Okay,
We did not get into a very finite detail on that. So.
okay.
So then we'll move on to Lawson then. And it was 2 weeks ago tomorrow, we met with the Lawson principal and superintendent and the grounds, head of buildings and grounds there. And I had a great discussion with Lawson. Cars are entering up here closer to Northwest 54th Court, circulating down, coming back out and coming in there. The school buses are coming in off of Northwest 54th Court and lining up along the east side of the school. There is on-street parking. We built as part of 62nd Avenue when we were gonna go ahead and lose the shoulder that was out there. Some of the school events, there was a lot of parking that was happening on the shoulder there. You do see these orange arrows here, and this is where we observe students, parents just randomly crossing 62nd Avenue during the drop-off and pickup. This was a concern for the leadership at Lawson there, just not using the crosswalks. And so we have the crosswalk, couple crosswalks along 62nd Avenue, one that's directly lined up with the trail crossing right here coming out of the City Hall. And then the one over here, if you recall, there's a small sidewalk that comes from the cul-de-sac up here, and the students head back east a little bit, and then they cross right here. The school district shared with us that there was only about 20 kids that use that east crossing. So it's like, how can we formalize it? There's just some frustration there that, and it's maybe an unintended consequence on what we did with 62nd Avenue. I think 62nd used to be a straight shot and had shoulders. We put curbs, we put on street parking, we added some side friction there. The speed limit was 25 miles an hour back in the day. It's 25 miles an hour during the school district. So people have a comfort level that they feel like they can cross the street at any location. And if you didn't feel safe, you would cross at a crosswalk probably. So I think that's a behavior issue that we're trying to solve. The school district did put a black chain link fence along the parking here to force people to use the crosswalk locations versus coming all the way through the parking lot at different locations. So again, just there's a lot going on right there. And so it's like, this is the point in the discussion is, are we trying to solve it engineering wise, or are we trying to solve it from a behavior thing? And that's one of the things one of our recommendations at the end here is just really maybe doing a public campaign blitz on crosswalks, school zones, and do that several times throughout the year, in the spring, before summer, before school starts, and then in October is, public safety or pedestrian safety month. So just trying to hit people with that information, and you probably could weave that in through the city's social media channels as well as the school district's social media channels. So a little bit, just with the queuing that is happening, and I know that everything the tweaks that have been made have been working better. One of the concepts we looked at, and this is how I grew up, is where the school buses parked out along the main road. They exited onto, we had concrete everywhere there. But you get off the bus and get on the concrete, but the bus is queued around the outside on the public street. In this case, it would be the parking. So that was one of the concepts, and then go ahead and get the parents to be able to circulate longer and move all that traffic off of the public roadway system and get it into the school site as best we can. The second concept that kind of came out of our meeting, and kind of brainstorming after what we heard back in the office a little bit, is there's probably opportunities. Lawson has 11 buses that come there, and they don't necessarily, they're not all there at the same time. So we need to refine that and actually get a hard count number. But based on all 11 buses is kind of where this dash line would be. And is there a way to be able to do that and then go ahead and switch the parent and the bus drop off from what's happening out there today and bring the cars in over here and then go ahead and have that parent drop off all the way along here on the east side of the building. So that would be kind of an operational change from what they're doing out there today. The other thing is, we have the two crosswalks here, and this crosswalk was kind of lined up to come in here from the trail purpose. But do we take and combine those two crosswalks and move it to the middle right here? And that's getting into probably switching out, and would we do a rapid flashing beacon at that location to help with that crossing during the day? And would we eliminate the stop sign over here to help with some of the circulation to keep the flow going? If you recall, back in the early 2000s, when we just had a 2-lane in front of the old high school, we used to have a stop sign at that location. It just kept acting like a meter. You pull up, one car would go, pull up another car. It just spread the cars out. So is there a way to get the traffic to continue to flow a little bit, have a rapid flashing beacon with a school crossing guard, move that school crossing guard from the current location over here at the east side of the school site to the middle and try to get everybody to come in there. And so I think that has a lot of merits. But again, I think what we want to do is get some policy wrapped around the rapid flashing beacon. There's some great information out there from HWA. We're checking in with some other communities. There are policies out there, but we just want to make sure that once we start putting them in, it's likely we'll get a lot of requests to look at other locations throughout town, and we just want to make sure that we apply things consistently throughout town when we do it. So. Moving over to Horizon, and so Horizon and Summit are somewhat tied by the hip. There's a lot going on Windsor Parkway. If you look right now, currently the parents are coming in and dropping off up around here, and kids are exiting, crossing in front of the cars and getting into the school district. Buses are over here on the west side of the building. Again, with everything that's happening on Windsor Parkway, we think it would be best to go ahead and excuse me, before I jump to some solutions here. You can see out here on Windsor Parkway, there's some drop off on the west side of 100th Street. And you can kind of see the cars that are queuing here in the red. Just off the edge of this slide is where we have some pop-up stop signs with the crossing right there. I did learn today, I think Iowa's the only state that allows pop-up stop signs in the MUTCD with their amendment that they do to it. So it's kind of unique to Iowa, I guess you'd say. And we also have a long queue along northbound on 100th Street coming into the site for the drop-off. So this site is kind of compounded by what's going on over at Summit. And so when we talk about Summit, we'll talk about a little bit of that stuff too. But really, I think what we want to do is get into, and I think the school district is already thinking this way, is going ahead and flipping their bus location and their pedestrian location, or excuse me, the parent drop-off, and get the buses to go ahead and circulate, come in one here in the yellow and come out two, and queue the buses up along here. It will require us to go ahead and remove the island for the school district to remove the island along here. But again, to use this far west aisle to queue up as much traffic as we can, as much apparent queuing, and then drop down to a single lane, and again, get that drop zone as long as we can. We are showing a little bit, another access or right in, right out here. And what we're just trying to do with that concept is go ahead and siphon off as much traffic as forcing is to come through the signal. We think this will allow this to be a little snappier and to be able to circulate traffic. So one would be kind of like a right in, right out. There's some ramifications with building something like that because the school's detention basin is in that location. And then as part of the Northwest 100th Street project, there is a long right turn that is being developed essentially from the south entrance to the school all the way down and in. So there's going to be some storage that would be out in the right turn lane and not into the through lane in Northwest 100th Street.
Storage, is that, I didn't,
Yeah, just a longer than normal storage just because of the school that's there.
okay.
Patrick, before you advance too far, on that horizon proposal with that added entrance, would you then propose folks could leave out of, one as well?
Yeah, so, again, probably the people early in the morning would come in through one, or they can circle around, come in into two. But the goal would be to siphon off the traffic, and when I say that, is really after they drop their kids off, if they're gonna go back north, or potentially go west on Windsor, they could go ahead and do that and not have to go out and get caught by the signal. So people, I'm guessing, are probably gonna be watching that signal to see where they're gonna hit that signal green at all or not, or just to minimize, we just want to keep traffic flowing. Normally, I would not be a proponent to build a right in, right out that close to the intersection. But again, in this situation, for the timeframes that we're talking, it's going to be compressed to a very small portion of the day. And it's repeat users day in and day out.
Patrick, we don't agree on that one, but. Because I think then you're introducing cross traffic to get out, and I would rather them come out the same way they came into the intersection and go left or right, but there is a merit to if they do cross there, then they're not stacking in that intersection, so I think it would be something that we'd have to look at, maybe, take a look at the operations after 100th Street gets completed, we have the additional right turn lane to help. Cognizant of, but we could take a look at a later time.
Will you be able to give an update on 100th Street as well sometime tonight? Thank you.
Oops, sorry. So we already touched on Wallace a little bit, and really you can see here, we already discussed the early learning program on the west side of the building, so I won't get into that. Again, this has a really long drop zone, which is great. You do see the queuing that does happen in red here along 62nd Avenue, and then extends all the way back up on 59th Court. There are a few cars, and depending upon maybe who's picking up, that do start to develop in front of Walgreens there. But again, I think what we would want to do is really work with this school. The operation works very, very well. How do we minimize the time on 62nd Avenue? Work with the parents to, hey, leave this open as long as we can, send those reminders out when we start seeing it. And then just, use 59th Court as that side street there. So to queue as many cars beyond, since it's just a very low volume roadway.
So when you say cars queuing up in front of Walgreens, you're talking about on 62nd?
On 62nd Avenue in the westbound direction in the outside lane, yes.
Because I presume, right now, that diagram you have there shows that people are queuing on 59.
Yep.
So did they come down 62nd and then turn right and go up and turn around, or how do they?
I think they come in up on, is that 63rd up there that we put across?
Do they
on the-
kind of know
The
that
created
that's?
in Johnston, yeah, they're circulating around through
Okay,
there.
okay.
And again, if you look at that service area, if you remember that service area map,
Yeah.
everything is kind of up in that area and then.
People
down-
coming
yeah,
from they're coming from the north anyway, so it's pretty easy to access.
It's pretty easy.
I guess, it's sort of like if you've never been to that school, our kids, when they went to Wallace, it was at the other
Sure,
Wallace.
yep.
So I've never had kids that go to this, it's sort of like kind of a foreign concept, but if you've been to that school, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly that. Okay, cool, thanks.
No, it worked very well. And there's some operational things like in the morning, you get some of the parents that drop off for the KTC program in the
Right.
morning.
Sure.
And they enter in on the west side of the building. And you have some people parking in the queue area, getting out of their cars, walking their child in and coming back out. So there was some of that stuff that was going on too. And again, I think, is there a cut time that, you don't get to do that or you need to park in the parking lot and walk them in, so.
So Patrick, sometimes after our early morning meetings, I will take that street, what is that?
Third.
63rd, because then I can avoid the stoplights down here. So, and I don't think about it sometimes, and the queuing is occurring. That road is very narrow, and I always hope that there isn't somebody coming off of 62nd north as I'm traveling south down that street, because that's right. So I, just keep that in mind, because, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that most people know that they need to drive up and around and queue that way, but I'm not always confident that everybody knows that.
Quick question on that. When you experience that in the morning, are they using, because back in early to mid 2000s, we put in that additional shoulder?
Right.
Because when the high school was there, they were parking, the students were parking along there. Are they getting all the way
I
over?
think they are, unless there's vehicles parked there, but I think we've taken care of that now.
Yep. Yep.
With the, prohibition against the semis, but
I was just curious if they were getting all the way over.
I think they are, which helps, obviously.
Again, the good news in the morning, it's a 15-minute, just reviewing
Right.
that chart again, the afternoon's a bigger issue with the 45 minutes, again, I think it's just geographically how spread
I
out
have
it is.
these nightmares of head-on collisions.
Yeah, that is a bad nightmare.
I kind of know where my kids went to school, it was kind of social hour in the afternoon for everybody to catch up and get out of their car and talk, so we just kind of,
Yeah, changing the afternoon behavior might be, good luck on that.
maybe that's where enforcement comes in. That was a joke. That was a
Yeah.
joke.
3 PM is our busiest hour of the 24-hour cycle.
Just touching on the middle school here, again, Summit tied with Horizon a little bit. And here's where you see that crossing right there, and you do see how we're starting to get the queues developed back in there. Again, is working to, put as much parking in here and double stacking them if we can. Jump down to the next one. Pull them in here, get double stacking as far as we can, and then getting that drop zone to happen very quickly. Now here, it's, 94th, 95th, 96th, 97th, right in through here. You're getting some parents that are dropping off on the north side in those cul-de-sacs up there. They try to prevent you from getting in the parking lot here. We have observed this school here. The second time they had a teacher out there discouraging that, and some people were coming because they were doing that, so they'd whip a U-turn and go back and go through and drop off in the queue. So again, it's some of that public education component and doing that social media blitz if we can, and working on that, and then the school is just reinforcing that stuff, through their PTAs and everything that they do on their end. So. And then much like on the Johnston Middle School here then, is much like Wallace, this functions fairly well. We do get a little bit of queuing that's happening at the signal here, and then also on that first right in, right out. And again, I think this depends a little bit on the time of year, because we do get we did see parents, dropping off and picking up over here at the tennis courts and then over here in the parking lots. And I'm guessing at that point, there could be some students that point. There is notice here a little bit is after the pickup, and getting through the signal, are people coming out of here fast enough, paying attention that they keep moving very quickly there, or they maybe paying attention to their phone or something, or, talking to their students after just getting in the car, asking how the day's going. So again, it's just trying to get this line to probably move as quick as possible. I know they've worked on, tweaking the signal timings here a little bit to make sure that the cars can keep flowing through. And I know there's early in the school year, I think the first couple of weeks, it probably slows down there a little bit. But then as people find different, with the locations with the school district, or the tennis courts and the parking lots, it kind of alleviates that. But again, the day I watched this earlier this year, it moved very, very quickly, so. So just a little bit on the conclusions. I think from an engineering perspective, we do have the concepts, and next week we'll work with, get those out in front of the school district. I think there needs to be some vetting of those and getting some conversation going back and forth, get some more feedback, and trying to come up with a plan to implement what makes sense there. And I really think on those rectangular rapid flashing beacons is really getting a good policy in place, so that if we decide to swap those out, one thing I didn't mention back at Summit, again, kind of a compliance thing there with parents running through the stop sign at that mid-block crossing we have there. Again, instead of a stop sign at that location where people disobey, are we better off using a rapid flashing at that location and having the crossing guard be able to activate the button? And to me, I think that would probably get us a little better compliance at that location. So. And then that education side, that behavior issue that we're trying to solve, and just having some better compliance out there. And I really think that comes down to some public education, a good message out there, a safe message, and could tie that in with other things throughout the city very well easily too. So now obviously that last one's the enforcement. We don't want to go that route at this time, because it will work when they're there and it won't work when they're not there. So that's a lot of information. Any questions?
So Matt and Patrick, this is a great presentation. I do imagine that there will be some good discussion around the proposals. It took us 45 minutes to get through the presentation. How much time do we have scheduled with the school board?
We don't have like an ending date or ending time.
How much time do we expect the meeting to go? I mean, I'm just wondering. I mean, I could see this easily take up an hour.
I mean, I see this an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, we could pare down the presentation a little bit and really just focus on, I think, a couple of, Horizon and Summit I know that those are major congested areas. We can talk a little bit about Austin since we've had some discussion. We can, kind of keep a 10,000-foot level view over some of the other schools. Try to help guide that. And I think, maybe making a suggestion of us getting together with the school district and having some further discussion to vet that after they've had some time to digest it, I think may help kind of shrink that window. But I think there will be some healthy discussion on a couple of those, but rapid flashing beacons in some of these areas. I know they were wanting to put the red flashing lights on top of the stop signs, but this may help move that discussion forward as well. So I think there's some things that we can do to keep that time down.
Maybe, Mayor, if we provide this information to the school board ahead of time, along with a cover letter that says just what you said there, that you are going to have both available for this overview, and that you'll talk a little bit about how you did, how you came up with the study, and that you're going to be available once they've had a chance to review it and ingest it. Then you'd be back for a more in-depth conversation. I think if we gave that to them ahead of time with that idea that there could be an opportunity for more in-depth conversation, they won't feel that they have to get into the in-depth of it at this meeting. Because what do we really want to learn from the school board? We want to hear more from their point of view about how they feel about their traffic backups and their timing. We've had this discussion before. We want to make everything really great and smooth. But if you go to other cities, what we perceive as a slowdown and a problem, other cities might say, gosh, I wish my wait time was what you've got. So I don't know what they'd say, but I'm just saying.
I think there needs to be some presentation. So that they
Oh,
can react
absolutely.
To the proposals, but I think, giving them, letting them know that there will be additional follow-up and more conversation, to determine what is the best approach, how is it gonna be implemented, that'll come later.
And I did share the memorandum with Superintendent Nikki Rorta to pass along to the board members so that they did have it ahead of time. So I did that last Friday, just so that they would have, they had asked to see that, and I wanted to get it in front of the council prior to giving it to them, but they do have it.
When is that meeting, Mike? I don't have it on my calendar.
Next Monday.
Did we send out a meeting invite?
Yep,
Okay.
I did. It is at 6 o'clock.
Any other questions for Patrick or Matt? Good job. That was the only item on our agenda. Mike, did you have, can we go to city administrator staff comments?
Yeah, I'm gonna first turn it over to Dennis to talk a little bit about 4th of July stuff.
Just to give the council a brief overview, and I don't think this is news to anybody, but we are now in that week of the 4th of July where fireworks and vandalism we typically see an uptick. We are again planning on upstaffing our patrol staff throughout the holiday weekend. Typically, in most cases, we have 3 officers working. For the 3rd through the 6th, we'll have at least 5 officers on in the evenings, some dedicated specifically to patrols around fireworks as well as vandalism. Partnering with the Parks Department again this year and making certain that they have staff that is helping us patrol the trails and the park system. Their job is not to intervene should they see anything, but just be a good witness and report. So as a reminder to everyone, I know that you'll get outreach from your constituents. The root of the challenge in this is the enforcement capabilities and the limitations that we have. Essentially, for us to be able to cite someone or issue a criminal violation, we have to see the fireworks being exploded. We have to see the individual that is lighting the fuse, so to speak, or setting them off, which is a tremendous challenge for us. Obviously, it's very easy to hear them and to see them in the sky. It's much more difficult to get a compliant witness to be willing to testify in court if our officers don't see them doing it themselves. We have another avenue of a disorderly house ordinance that we typically will try to enforce as well. What essentially that is, if you have a household that is sponsoring a gathering, a large party, those kinds of things, if we can't get cooperation at the scene, then what we will do is we will find the homeowner, we will give an advisal to them that they need to stop, that it's illegal, that they can't do it in Johnston. Should we be called back there after that warning, then we'll issue the citation for disorderly house is our typical practice. So looking at trend data over the last few years, our calls for service by members in the community have gone down in the trend, but we all know that the reality is that we've seen an increase in activity. And one of the challenges we face on the west side is that you can have a city block that backyards, one is in Grimes, which they allow the fireworks, and one is in Johnston where they do not. So usually there's some public education as far as some of those pieces go, but it's an uphill battle for us each year. Nonetheless, we will continue to do our best to try to mitigate things as well as we can. I will also be out riding the night of the 4th as I typically do. That's usually our most active night, and sometimes it's just easier to have the police chief there to diffuse things when they need to. So I would anticipate that by the second meeting in July, we'll probably have some sort of statistical report that I'll offer to you just as far as a breakdown of calls for service, citations, that sort of thing. So with that, the challenges that we face continue to be with the state legislature as far as what they will allow for fireworks or what they will not allow us as a city to regulate. That, you know, it's always good when you have people that are frustrated to reach out to their local legislators and express their concern too for that. So happy to answer any questions. We will do our best and we will do what we can to try to make sure our parks and trails are cared for in addition to responding to the calls as they come.
Any questions for the chief? Thank you, chief. Other
Um,
staff comments?
Yes, Matt, also.
I wanted to go ahead and just let everybody know that we are watching the Saylorville water levels. They are projected in that just slightly over 875 to around 880. Water levels, just as a reminder, 884 is the emergency spillway. They can raise the gates on that, which would get you to 890. So right now, we're not projected to get there. However, they are projected to increase the outflow. Right now, we're at 15,000 CFS, and it's projected to go up to 20,000 CFS, starting roughly on about July 7th. I know that staff and I went and checked water levels in the creek today. Water is slowly still flowing out, but with the increase, we'll keep an eye on that just to make sure that we don't have anything and start any of that flooding or backwater, tailwater flooding. One of the things to be, that all could change tonight. We're supposed to have some heavy rains. Some may be localized, and if we get some of that localized heavy rains, that could be anywhere up to 3 inches of rain, maybe even more tonight. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that and see where that falls. And then one additional item would be an update on 100th Street. We have paved the southbound lanes from 62nd to just north of Windsor Parkway. They have identified that we've got the overhead poles that remain at the box culvert are in the way to pave the northbound lanes. Mid-American was at our progress meeting today. They will have those removed. They've got to finish installing their cable to remove those lines. They'll have that work done by the end of next week, weather permitting. And then next week, about Tuesday, Wednesday, Mackinac will be moving in their crew to prep and rock the rest of the subgrade. The contractor's currently hoping to pave the rest of the southbound lanes to White Oak, which would be through the intersection, and then drop back and pave the northbound lanes to the same spot. And then we'd have some turn lanes and handwork to do. So hopefully, weather permitting, by the end of the month, we would have pavement through that intersection completed. And then we'd talked to Iowa Signal, which is installing the stoplights, and they've got 7 days worth of work once the intersection is in and completed. So to get the signal in. So Mother Nature cooperates. We're still on target to actually a little bit of ahead of schedule if we can get to White Oak Lane with the paving. But we'll keep you updated. Thank you. They still have been told that the intersection is the main goal. So that's all I've got.
Anything
No
else,
other
Mark?
reports tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and do city council comments? Jim? And even if you don't, it was great. Councilman Cole.
I have nothing.
Matt, I thank you very much for the update. The only thing I would kind of add is when they extended and closed off that second south entrance of Horizon, I know that's also going to be something that they're watching very carefully since that's where their buses usually enter. So they're already getting nervous.
We did speak with them prior to closing that off, and they're aware of that. Like I said, at one point in time, it was going to be closed off with their busing, so they were prepared to be able to enter and exit at that same, because since they are able to spin around, they'll be fine with it because it was going to be closed at some point, but hopefully we can get it back open even before before school starts, then we won't have to worry about it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nothing further.
I guess the only thing I'll give an update for those of you that aren't on my email list, the Johnston Climate Change Committee, we were gonna have a Beaver Creek cleanup on the 13th of this month, and usually we wade through water about up to our mid shaft, yeah, below our knees, and frankly, I don't want to swim it. And so we are postponing to sometime in September, and we're trying to get some of the environmental teachers at the high school we're trying to connect with them and maybe even get some students involved. So it's all good. That's all I have.
I was just looking at my calendar here, and I just want to, again, thank the staff for their participation since our last city council meeting and a couple of really great events. We had Movies in the Yard out here. What was the name of the movie?
Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda, yes, how could I forget? And there were literally hundreds of families and kids out there, and then, of course, the event this past Saturday night was incredible, and we had over 1,000 people out here, and so, like I said, I'm just not a big AC/DC fan, but the band did an amazing job, and the warm-up band, the opening band, prior to the Back in Black, they did a fantastic job as well. But in addition to that, we had the live serve ribbon cutting, and huge turnout for that. A great event, and one that I think all of us are proud of because it's a beautiful building. I think they were all of them really good to work with, and what a service to our community. So we had live serve. We had what else did we have? The police get together. That was a nice event. A lot of people turned out for that, and we were driven inside because of the weather. But man, all of the little kids that were at that event, I mean, it looked like a kindergarten roundup. The police officers have been busy and not always on the job. But it was fun. It was a great event. Anyway, just a lot of things have gone on since the last time that we got together. So I wanted to acknowledge that and again, just thank everybody for going above and beyond and making this community the great community that it is for our residents. So thanks. Thank you very much. So with that,
I don't have anything to add either, Mayor.
right? Okay, we'll take it.
Suresh had.
Oh, Suresh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, I would add nothing else to add, so thank you.
There's nothing to add.
But nothing to add? Okay, thanks, Councilman Reddy. We're gonna take just a 2-minute break. We'll get started here in just a minute.